Immigration and you. I am your immigration attorney, Michael Fulwani, and once again we have with us attorney David Nachman, my partner.
Thanks so much,
David,
Michael.
I believe that you
Namaste.
wanted to talk a couple of minutes again on reminding our viewers about H-1 visas.
I'm not even going to take a few minutes, Michael. I just wanted to remind all of our viewers, if you haven't already started thinking about it, now is the time. We're coming into the H-1B season. Now is the time to start thinking about getting your documentation together. If you haven't already done credentials evaluations to ensure that you have the equivalence of a U.S. baccalaureate degree, now is the time to do it. If you're thinking about doing labor condition applications, now is the time to do it. Don't wait till the last minute. It could be that this year we'll be looking at another possible lottery, and we don't want that to happen and for your application to be blocked out. So the only way that you get included in the group of H-1Bs is if you submit as close to April 1st as you possibly can. We're striving to be sending out all of our H-1Bs by March 31st, and we encourage you to get the documentation that you need to back to us so that we can send it out as quickly as possible. So be aware now, this is only CAP cases. So we're not talking about H-1B extensions, we're not talking about CAP exempt H-1Bs, we're talking about new H-1B petitions in the new CAP. So that's those are the ones we're focusing on.
Let's go back for our trip to India. And one of the issues that came up, because many people, when they apply for an immigrant visa, they go through a process. Immigration approved the petition, National Visa Center wanted the fees to be paid, affidavit of support to be done, all documents are submitted, and now the interview has come, and they think now they all have to go and pick the immigrant visa and come. But that's not necessarily so always, because we've seen some cases where the American consul either would deny or keep it pending, and then we did find out what are the common reasons, why does that happen, and one of the common reasons relates to family cases on the 864 affidavit of support. And we find that some people, the income is insufficient. It was probably sufficient when it was filed, but the current, they want this to be updated with a new tax return and new documents. Or there's some mistakes that are made that NVC might have ignored it. For example, the person, an old lady, she was the petitioner, and she gave an affidavit of support, but no information why tax return is not submitted. So the requirement there is that if somebody is not submitting the tax return, then something has to be filed. For example, an affidavit or letter from that old lady that I am a household wife, I'm not working and all that. Same thing also about the poverty guidelines. Maybe in the 2012, the income was good, and 2013, the income is not good. So then they are not going to accept that affidavit of support that was executed in 2012. Therefore, they want, okay, presently you don't have a good income, so you file a new 864 maybe, which may have other family members living there, because that requirement can be met by the income of the petitioner himself or herself, or a spouse or the other children also included, the dependents on that, and it's called a household income. And the household income may be sufficient. And if the household income also is not sufficient, then you need a joint sponsor, somebody else. It doesn't have to be a relative or anybody that is a citizen or a green card holder and has got a good income, and at that point they will count. Let us say a citizen is giving a joint sponsor. So they will look how many members are in that family and how many members or people are coming from India. So let's say they have a family of 4 and the people that are coming is another 4, so 8 people. Then they look at the poverty guidelines. For the family of 8, including the petitioner and the beneficiaries, is this income sufficient? That is the criteria. So that is very important to understand that when you are executing 864, take all these factors into consideration. I had a case 6 months or 1 year is still pending. They keep on giving another wrong one, another insufficient. The other thing that we issue, what they want to look in immigrant visa cases, people who were here in the US before, they stayed illegally, so the American consul want to make sure that there was no unlawful presence, what we call the Section 9B, and if there is unlawful presence, that person may be denied for either 3 years or 10 years, depending on the period of unlawful presence. There are some cases they find there is a fraud, misrepresentation, fraudulent marriage, fraudulent divorce, including other children in the same petition, smuggling. So these are some of the reasons for which they deny, but the most frequent is 864 that I have seen.
Michael, I'd like to address the 864 analysis so that our viewers can understand what we're saying. And the way it works is this, is that the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services on an annual basis, it's usually around March, they come out with the criteria or the level of income that an individual has to have in order to be able to sponsor. And then that level of income is graduated based upon the number of people in the family. And that's what Michael's referring to as the household income. So it depends upon the number of people that you have in the family. And so, for example, this year for one or two people, it's going to be about $20,000. And then it's graduated upwards for each person in the family, and usually it goes up about $500 per person, and so on. So there's several different ways to meet the criteria under the I-864. The first one, of course, is to show on your tax return that you've actually made that $20,000. If you don't have that, there's another way that you can do it. You can look at assets. And the way that you look at assets is based upon a liquidation value of those assets. So for example, if you have a house that's worth $250,000 and it's in your personal name, you would liquidate that to 1/3 value. And if you have the valuation that you need, you can pass through the I-864 using the valuation of the house. But remember that probably if you have a house, you may have a mortgage on the house. So what you have to do is you have to judge it against the equity. So what you would do is you would take the value of the house, deduct the mortgage, and then judge the value of the equity at a liquidation value. Now, if that all fails and you can't do it based upon assets and you can't base it upon income, then of course, as Michael said, you can go get a joint sponsor. And then of course, they're going to judge the joint sponsor based upon the same analyses. One is, does that person make the right amount of income? Or two, does that person have the assets at the liquidation value? If, of course, both fail, you can also go out and find another joint sponsor. But hopefully you don't get to that point. Hopefully at that point,
I want to make a point on the assets. And my experience is that they are more looking at the liquid. Now, basically, somebody is living in the house. And he said, I'll sell the house. And then they don't really like that, don't think that's practical. They don't think that's going to happen, that the person is going to sell the house and then use those funds for the support.
Well, yeah, it's a totality of the circumstances test.
Yes,
and they're going to look at liquid, and they're going to look at non-liquid, and they're going to look at, basically they're going to look at the individual's total portfolio, and they're going to make a valuation based upon that. That's absolutely right.
Okay, let's move on to another subject. Every day we get calls from our viewers. Comprehensive immigration reform bill. When, what's happening? Now, we know that the Senate passed the bill, which has a lot of provisions of the DREAM Act, giving legal status to people and even a pathway to citizenship. But the House didn't pass. So we talked about this many times, so we don't know, repeat all that again. Question is, where are we now? What are we looking at? The good thing here is two things. One of the main issue on which Republicans are fighting is said, if you want to put a path to the citizenship, no way. No talk, nothing. It's dead, toasted, on arrival, as they say.
Right.
So finally, and Obama said previously no, and Democrats were unwilling to compromise on that.
But I think it's really important for our viewers to understand why the pathway to citizenship is dead. And the reason why the pathway to citizenship is dead is because the GOP, the Republican Party, realizes that if they give a pathway to citizenship, that 11 to 14 million people are predominantly going to be voting not Republican but Democratic within the next 7 to 13 years, which means potentially they're staring down the barrel at the elimination of the Republican Party altogether. So it really has to do with votes. So what we see now is that the compromise might be that they're willing to allow not a pathway to citizenship, but a pathway to get some form of status to allow them to be here without the ability to vote. And that may be the middle ground.
Yeah, basically it's just not some form. First of all, main thing is President Obama came out with that position that, okay, it's all right. As long as they get a green card, we don't have to push for path to citizenship. Similarly, some of the Democrats also came out, and the Republicans now are kind of willing to at least be in a compromise mode, because if the Democrats and the president is not insisting about the path to citizenship, they are willing to go up to the green card level. So you get a green card, but let's not talk about anything about citizenship now. Personally, I think majority of our viewers, majority of the people, even the Latinos have expressed, okay, fine, give us a green card, we can work, we can live, we can travel, we can be with the family or whatever,
Right.
We worry about how many times laws have changed and passed and passed. Does it prevent 2, 3 years, 5 years, 4 years down the road that a Congress can come up with another law and opening the path to the citizens? It's always a possibility. Let us get what we can get today.
Right. No, I agree with you, Michael, but I think that what it is for me is deja vu all over again, because it seems to me that the last big push on comprehensive immigration reform, which was back when McCain was pushing on it, was that what we have is an argument of owner versus renter mentality.
Yeah.
So if what the Senate has done is given us the ability to allow for owner mentality.
Exactly.
Owner mentality is that the individuals have a pathway to citizenship, become citizens, put their roots down, and stay here and add value to the economic infrastructure in the United States. The thing that the House of Representatives seems to be compromising on is in order to save their backsides, so to speak, what they're doing is they're pushing this renter's mentality. The renter's mentality is that the individuals are going to have green cards, but the thing is, and here's the distinction. The distinction is if you own your home, you're really going to take care of that home because you have equity building up in it. But if you're a renter, do you really care that much about the building? You don't care that much because it's the owner who really has to care because they have the equity. You're just renting. And that's the difference between the two. So what the House of Representatives seems to be pushing is what's considered a renter's mentality, and that's what we don't want. So what we're going to try to do is we're going to try through various lobbying efforts to try to help the House of Representatives and the GOP understand the downsides of the renter mentality.
But again, I understand as a nice analysis and presentation. The people, if they have an option, okay, if this is going to kill the bill, this issue that we cannot withdraw this, we cannot change this mentality of giving up or not giving up the citizenship, and the result is going to die down for many years to come.
That's what happened.
That's
exactly what happened.
So
in the
right
past.
now, what I'm saying, what a lot of groups are saying, okay, let us take what we can with a little. I mean, not with happiness, with reluctance. We are reluctant to do that, but instead of just being obstinate and saying either you give us path or you don't give us, forget the bill. I would say majority of the people will say, okay, let's get what we can get today. They are dying. They want to have a green card.
No, Michael, I agree with you.
Yeah.
And please understand that, the wonderful thing, I love studying history.
Yeah.
Studying history is a wonderful thing because the reason why studying history is so important
But
is
you
that
love
we learn a lesson.
You love history. I like geography.
Okay, but the study of history allows us to learn our lesson.
Yes,
And so what I think, if we go back and we study the history of what happened before and why comprehensive immigration reform fell apart, we can actually understand why it fell apart before, and now you're absolutely right, is let's grab onto what we can get and move forward. Because we saw it fall apart before, now we understand that that's the reason. Let's put our differences aside and let's take what we could get and go forward from there. I agree with you 100%.
And now they're realizing also, Republicans, that there's no way that they are going to be able to deport 11 or 12. They agree. They believe it, that it's not possible. And they also understand that if we are giving them the legal status, there are so many conditions attached to it.
That's right.
They have to pay back taxes. They have to pay some penalties. They have to pay all taxes of the future. And they have to wait 10 years or 6 years or whatever period, even to get a green card. First, they are going to get a legal status. They have to then work hard. They have to pay their taxes.
The massive.
They have to learn English, for students. They have to learn English. And they have to.
But most important, Michael, are the border security metrics, that they have to be met at 95%. And that's a very, very high standard. But what it tells you is that there's going to be tremendous amount of government spending in organizations before this comprehensive immigration reform comes in.
Hopefully, what they are saying, the analyst people are saying, that Mr. Boehmer, he takes this very seriously. He gets some support of the Democrats and some Republicans, and it may be possible to get the bill passed sometimes in 2014. And many people are looking at also the 2014 and 16 elections being one of the reasons to do that, so that they can also, Republican, get some votes from the Latino and other immigrant groups. I think with this we have to stop here, running out of the time. And thank you very much, David, for being with us today.
Always a pleasure, Michael.
And thank all of you for watching the program. Please keep watching us every Saturday and Sunday on Vision of Asia and ITV. Thank you very much and goodbye.